Okay, so for my food truck simulation, I kind of stuck to the same things, and my reasons why is based on the data and the research that I did. So these are like the three ones that I looked at the most. I mean, these are also important, but these are the ones that I just stuck by the entire time of this assignment. So the first one was the frozen treat sales. Just because that I felt like that was the most important and crucial, just because these are like the four main demographics: children, young adults, adults, and seniors. And ice cream is pretty much, the highest, except on young adults and adults, but those are it's still pretty close to the frozen yogurt. Um, so I thought that was just, interesting because even though, frozen yogurt is, a little greater than that, it's still like, it's only greater by 5, and then this is 306 and that's just 278. So even though it's not like the biggest out of the young adults and stuff, ice cream is still pretty high. So then I knew that I was gonna do ice cream. I still played around with like frozen yogurt a little bit, and it didn't do that bad. And when I did smoothies, it absolutely was not good for my sales at all. And then you can kind of course, just see the numbers right here. As you know, ice cream is still like the biggest out of, children and stuff. Like I said earlier, the young adults and stuff, ice cream is just a little bit shorter than like frozen yogurt, but it's still high up in numbers and everything. And then also, like, of course, with ice cream and children, that's a much larger number than like these two, and it same goes for here. So that's kind of like the frozen treat sales by demographic. That's what I focused on. Also, demographics by location were like the biggest things too. So as you can see, like there's a mix of like people, except that in train stations and university. I only did the university a couple of times. I never actually once, I don't think, did train station in any of my scenarios, just because there's only just like a couple of people. I don't think I really ever did downtown either, just because like train station is just working commuters and then working professionals, and yeah, it's like a demographics of like, older and younger people. But then I just kind of focused on, well, the beach has families, and with children, and that's like a lot, how big are the families, and students as well. And the same thing with the art districts, like you have children and young and older couples and stuff. So it's also like a family environment, and usually families, I feel like, tend to spend more because they have children and everything like that. Also, the city market, I feel like, personally, and like on this and everything, when people generally buy a lot when they go to the city market, and it's always super super busy, and they don't mind waiting and everything. So I mostly did like these three things. I didn't focus too much on the beach that much, just because when I did, my sales were not as good as they were as the art district and the city market. And the last one is sales by location. I also focused on this. I mostly just did demographics and the location the most, just because I feel like that's the most important. So like I said, like surprisingly, it was the beach that, of course, was the most. But I think that's just because of families and children and all that stuff, and those high in numbers. However, I thought it was like really shocking to me, just because like my sales weren't as great. I mean, they weren't bad. The only time they were pretty just not what I wanted them to be is when I decided to do push cart and the beach. So I thought that was surprising, because that number is 148 and the university is 143. But I mean, the university numbers weren't that bad either. It's just people, can't wait that long in line because like they have classes. And I know this was like the third of the largest as 131, but that's actually where I got my biggest of sales. I decided to do city market in my scenario, like C and everything, and that was my largest, by far my largest revenue. And here is why I'm going to show you the numbers on here. Excuse me, sorry. So I decided just to do ice cream, the food truck, and in the city market for all 5 weeks. And as you can tell, my sales were kind of amazing. They were all in, like the $1,000 range, which was really super nice, and that was even a high number, even higher than that, and it really just stayed consistent for all 5 weeks, which I found out when I first kind of played around with it. So the first thing that I did before I got to restart the simulations, I had first done the food truck, the ice cream, and I went back to the art district just because like the first time that I did it, that's when my sales were like super well and everything. So I decided to do that again, but things do change, and I decided not to do research and everything. I just like went with it for the third scenario, and then I was like, oh, you know what, I haven't done like the city market, and I remembered someone saying, hey, Mike, when I did city market, it was like pretty well. So that's why I did it, and then that's when I realized and I did it for like the last 3 weeks because I did the art district, ice cream, and food truck in the first 2 weeks, and then when I saw the sales and everything for like the last 3 weeks, I was like, okay, so this is why the revenue's high. So I had asked to restart the scenario, and I got to, and then for all 5 weeks I did for scenario C, the city market, ice cream, and food truck, and that's how my sales are like they are. So for scenario A and everything, I did, I kind of played around with it, but mostly I did the food truck, ice cream, and art district, and that's when my sales, like the first time I really understood this, I was like, okay, so this is skyrocketing, like that's so good. Scenario B, it was it was kind of a struggle bus. Like I could have just stuck with the first time I did this scenario, because my revenue was about 1,800 or 18,000 and some whatever numbers they were. And the second time I did it, it was actually 13,000, which is kind of I think I just don't like the push cart. I thought I could work with it, but I really can't. I don't know if anyone else has that problem, but it was just not, it was not good. The push cart, I don't really know if you could do the push cart with like a certain, location with a menu, but I just don't think you get very much, the revenue that you probably would want, in my opinion. So I'm never would want to do the push cart. I mostly stuck with the food truck. I think that was like the most important in everything, but my scenario B was kind of all over the place. I did different things more so just because that was the most that I played around with it. I think I did like smoothies at one point, just to see the numbers. But I kind of did just stick to the last 2 weeks of the art district, ice cream, and food truck, because that's what I was comfortable with, because I knew those numbers were probably going to be in this range, like 1,800 and stuff, like half of this and everything is going to be around there. So that's when I decided to just stick with that. But I didn't restart it again, just because it was already that Sunday. So I was like, oh, it's okay, I'll just do better on scenario C, which I did. My total revenue for everything was 37,320, which was amazing. I really, really liked it. I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh, I never had, I knew that I wanted my revenue to be over 35,000, and luckily it was. But that's kind of all my decision making was. I really just looked at these 3 things. I mean, I didn't really look at, the foot traffic, or the local competition. I never actually really looked at this until we were in class, and the frozen industry report. I kind of just focused on, the frozen treat sales by demographics by location, and then the sales by location as well. And that's kind of what all my decision making was. So yes, thank you.